Something's wrong. I haven't talked about the iPad mini on this channel for months it feels, but I can confirm it's still very much in use. It's still the best iPad that Apple makes. I think it's wonderful, it's my favourite iPad of all time, etc, etc. But for some reason I haven't spoken about it, so let's change that today. I'm a parent now, and although my son is way too young to have an iPad mini just yet, I have been expanding my horizons a bit and thinking about the whole back to school thing. And I think for certain budgets and certain scenarios, the iPad mini 6 is the perfect iPad for back to school. Yes, the budget is questionable, but bear with me. Before I get started, just a very quick word from today's sponsor, which is Scrintal. And yes, this is a tool for parents, but if your kid is really getting into planning and visual kind of storytelling and all that sort of stuff, they might find it interesting as well. Over the last few months, I've been using Scrintal to plan the Mark Ellis Academy. I'm the sort of person who has to get ideas down in front of me and not necessarily written. I need to kind of map things out. And Scrintal has been absolutely fantastic for that. Scrintal is a visual-first knowledge management tool where you can brainstorm and develop ideas. And as it turns out, it works fantastically on the iPad mini. And the team behind Scrintal wants to help you turn every idea into the next big thing. And the idea is that you start by creating chaos on this massive canvas. It works brilliantly, and you can use Scrintal boards to map complex projects, to build processes, to plan, to study, and to research. I've only scratched the surface of Scrintal, but just the ability to get those academy ideas out of my head and onto the page has been really transformative. I can plan course material, I can plan each stage of the academy, I can make any notes about the media that I want to use in the future. I can basically add notes to everything and link everything together. And the best news is I've worked with Scrintal to get you a 10% discount, and they have a 7-day money-back guarantee. So there's literally nothing to lose. Go and check it out. The link is below. Of all the iPads that I've reviewed on this channel, the iPad mini is the most popular by quite a distance. For some reason, this thing is absolutely timeless with my audience, which must count for something. And that's why whenever parents say to me, which iPad should I buy my kid, I reach for the iPad mini. I've always said that iPads are more functional and more interesting and just better when you add stuff to them. The first thing is the Paperlike screen protector. If you've never tried one of these, I just urge you to check it out. It protects the iPad, so it is a screen protector in every sense of the word, but also it turns the display into a really satisfying writing device. And yes, as the name suggests, it feels like paper. It's absolutely magical, but unlike a lot of screen protectors, the Paperlike doesn't dull the screen, it doesn't make the contrast worse, it looks as good as it should do, but you get this fantastic writing surface as well. And they're running a fantastic back to school offer at the moment, so if you buy a Paperlike between now and September the 17th, you get the Digital Pro Planner for free. And I think kids are going to love that planner. It's fantastic for working out the rest of 2023 at school. You get yearly, monthly, weekly, and daily pages on which they can create to-do lists, set their top priorities for the term, and take notes. And you can use it within Notes apps like my favourite, Notability. Paperlike are also throwing in stickers and inserts for that back to school kit, which is perfect for the planner. So to find out more, just click that link below. Now obviously your kid will need a writing implement to get their ideas and stuff down onto their iPad mini, but I'm guessing, bearing in mind that this isn't the cheapest iPad on the market, which I'll come on to later, that adding a second generation Apple Pencil to that shopping cart is going to be a bit of a stretch for a lot of parents. I'd be the same, which is why rather than buying the Apple version, I would buy the Benx version. And that's because the Benx version is 40 quid. Now the Benx pen does have one downside, which is that it doesn't have pressure sensitivity. So if your kid is doing art or any kind of drawing type stuff with their iPad, it will probably be a bit of a pain. If they're not doing that, if they're just taking notes and jotting things down, the Benx pen will save you an absolute packet. The other thing I'd get is a case, because kids can be a little bit haphazard with their tech, as we know. I'm using the Moft Snap Float Folio. This is a brilliant option, I think. It's basically the world's first origami iPad case. I bet you didn't think you needed that, did you? No, you didn't, but you trust me, you do. Basically, it covers the iPad back to front, so there's loads of protection, but also, if we do that, It gives us this fantastic stand, which you can use to consume content, or you can fold around, use for writing. It's so flexible. There's two reasons in particular that I think the iPad mini is perfect for back to school. The first thing is the size. Look at it, it's utterly tiny. If we compare it against the iPad Pro, there's no competition. It's utterly lovely when it comes to portability. And no, I'm sure you're not going to buy your kid a 12.9-inch iPad Pro, who would? But the point being, this is just so convenient. You can just chuck it into your school rucksack without worrying about it. And that's the other thing about the iPad mini 6, which doesn't get enough headlines. It's very, very durable. And yes, I've got a case for mine. I've got the Paperlike screen protector on there, but I do quite often leave it naked like this. And bearing in mind, this is 2 years old, there is not a single dent, nick, scratch or anything anywhere. It looks as good as the day I bought it. A lot is often said about the power of the iPad, you know, the fact that people don't upgrade these very often because they last so long, but not enough people talk about how strong and durable they are. They really can take a beating, and let's be honest guys, that matters when it comes to school. Now, despite this small frame, the iPad mini 6 is a beast. I took this to Brussels a couple of months ago, and it was the only computing device I had in my backpack. I did everything on this iPad mini while I was away, and it's just utterly amazing what you can do with it. I used the camera to shoot an entire YouTube video. I did all of my admin, long form writing. The only thing it let me down on was a podcast recording, but that was down to a setting in GarageBand. It was nothing to do with the iPad mini 6 itself. So in terms of using this at school for stuff beyond note-taking and browsing the web and watching things, well, it's very, very capable. Your kid will not feel shortchanged with this. There are, however, some downsides. Let's start with the price, because this isn't the cheapest iPad on the market, and it has two odd storage options. The 64 gig version, which is the base model, and let's be honest, that isn't much storage these days. That costs $499/£569. And then the only other option is 256 gig. There's no 128, and there's nothing above 256. So it's either 64 or 256, and that one is $649 or £749. Now, if you want the absolute cheapest iPad for your kid, it's the 9th generation that you need to go for. That is still an absolute steal, I think, at $329 or £369. Apart from going second hand with the iPad mini 6, the 9th generation iPad is the most cost-effective route into iPadOS for your kid, but it's not an iPad mini. The other thing to bear in mind is that the iPad mini 6 is starting to get a little bit long in the tooth in tech terms, so it's about 2 years old now, and it's running, I had to look this up, it's running the A15 Bionic, and it doesn't have things like the ProMotion display that you get on the iPad Pro, which I think, given the price for this thing, it should have. Now, it's no slouch, like I mentioned earlier, it's a very capable iPad, and the display, well, there's nothing wrong with it. It just doesn't have that 120 Hz smooth refresh rate. And if you're the sort of person who wants the best of the best, you may want to wait. Will we get a new version this year? I have absolutely no idea. If we do, it will probably be in October. So if you can wait until October, I would. If nothing arrives in October, just get this one. And lastly, there's no Apple branded keyboard for this. I would absolutely chop something off to have a Magic Keyboard Folio for the iPad mini. I'm not expecting to write War and Peace on this thing at all, but the ability to have a keyboard case that covers both sides of the iPad and gives you a proper QWERTY keyboard, Now, thankfully, there are loads of mini Bluetooth keyboards that you can use very happily with the iPad mini 6, but I just want to see Apple do something. Once again, I am conscious that the iPad mini 6 could be a bit of a budget stretcher when it comes to back to school, but if you do have the budget and you want to get your kid an iPad that is conveniently sized, very powerful, utterly lovable, and will last a long, long time, the iPad mini 6 is a very good buy still. I would have loved to have one of these when I was at school many, many years ago. But anyway, I'll leave you with those thoughts, and if you want to see how this thing got on in Brussels, keep watching for a link to that video.